But somewhere along the line, I learned that I get to choose my focus.
Yeah.
That came late in life. It came with all these changes I went through here this past 11 years. But I get to choose my focus. And I don't want to focus on the things that scared the hell out of me.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, veterans, and all you amazing people out there who love you some veterans. Hey, welcome to another episode here on Heart of a Volunteer Veterans Podcast. This is Saga episode 028, Unspoken Messages, with your co-host, Vietnam veteran, Richard Rowland. Enjoy the show. All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the show. And let me introduce and welcome our co-host for today, Richard Rowland. Richard, how you doing today, brother?
I am doing great, Chris. Thank you so much for having me on today. I'm really looking forward to a conversation.
Yeah, definitely. And I tell you what, Richard, I think that you and I are going to be talking some more in the future. I enjoy talking to you. And, of course, we're going to learn some more about you and reasons why other people should be following what you're doing with the books that you're writing and things like that. So, how's your week going? How's your week been?
Week's been going good. It's busy. We've got a lot of things on. I'm in Maine currently, and our summers are a little limited. We've already started cooling down for fall.
Must be nice.
So we're running around like crazy trying to get a lot of things done before winter gets here next week.
Right. What are you doing up there in Maine, like, as far as work around your place?
Well, we're having to have a bunch of fasciboards replaced on the house that are rotted out, and there's a bunch of scraping and painting going on. The barn needed a new roof. There's just no wind, and like I said, you're limited, number one, by the number of people that do the work, and number two, by the time constraints of everybody needing to get things done in a 3-month period, 3.5 month period.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Wow, I bet it's beautiful up there right now.
It is beautiful, and one of my passions is photography, and I hadn't got to do that for a few days, but I do really enjoy getting out and taking pictures and then working on them, showing other people what I see through my eyes.
Right. Now, let me ask you a question, Richard. On your book cover, did you take that picture?
I did.
Okay.
I did. There's a little story behind that. We had an artist at the farm that day. Mm-hmm. I owned horse stables in Kentucky after I retired from the state police. We'll get into that later, but had a farm, and I did a lot of photography. And we had an artist out there that was doing photography that day for the book cover. And she ended up using 2 pictures that one of them I had taken and the other one my wife had taken, because the cover of the book is a horse's head, face, eye, and then inside the eye is a reflection of me and a horse walking away from the back.
Yeah.
And the message was that the whole book is about a journey within.
Right.
And so I had a graphic artist in Chicago, Greg, I'll think of his last name later, super guy, Vietnam vet. Met him online, never met him physically. Had a whole bunch of heart problems from Vietnam. He was a combat vet. Mm-hmm. Greg Ambrose, it was his name. And he did the photography manipulation or graphic arts for the cover. He created a cover for me from my photographs.
Very cool.
And he passed away about 1.5 years ago. And I was disappointed that as much as we communicated on the phone back and forth and on the computer, that I never got to actually meet him.
Right.
But to have the contact we did, that's one of the pluses in my life. He's just a super guy, very talented fellow.
Yeah, well, that cover turned out really good. I definitely like that cover, and I'm going to look at that eye thing you were talking about. That's some deep stuff. I like that.
Now, the original photograph before being manipulated, and I do a lot of the horse's eye is very reflective. It's such a big eye, and the size of it under certain, it's generally better on a cloudy or overcast day. You pick up the reflections of what's in front of them.
Yeah.
So I do a lot of photography that is an eye reflection shot. So the original photograph of that horse that day, the reflection was another horse, an actual, really clear reflection of another horse in his eye.
Yeah.
But I had the idea that I knew what I wanted, and Greg was able to put it together. Now, on the back of the book, we have me and a horse walking up over a hill, and you can't see what's on the other side of the hill. And that's indicative of the journey we're all on.
Right.
You know, we might think we know where we're going, and we might think we know what's ahead, but you really, really don't until you get there.
So, yeah, Richard, I'm excited to for everyone to hear about how you got to this point where you are right now. But let's jump back at the beginning, man. I mean, you're a Vietnam veteran. Where did that volunteer spirit, where did that start?
I think it came, I think part of it is bred into you. I don't think you can escape from it. I think that there are certain things you're going to do. Mm-hmm. And service to others through the military was something that was pretty much expected of me. Nobody came right out and said, you have to join the Army, the Marines, or some one of the services, but the expectation was there. It's kind of an unspoken thing. And I've been a patriot all my life. My father is a World War II vet. He was wounded on the beach, Normandy, D-Day, went back to England. He was shot in the leg, went back to England, healed, went back again with Patton's army as a foot soldier with Patton's army, and then almost lost his feet to frostbite. Anyway, I come from patriot.
Yeah.
That is bred into me.
Yeah.
So there wasn't any denying it. I actually joined the service even with Vietnam going on. I joined the service while I was still in high school on a delayed enlistment. Mm-hmm. Because there were certain things that I wanted. And I think there's probably toyed with the idea of Army being my calling in life. I played with the idea of staying. Mm-hmm. But then things happen that you can't really control. Yeah. And I stayed 2 years, 7 months, and 25 days. Everybody knows how long they were in the service.
Yeah.
And I got out and went on my merry way.
Now, what'd you do while you were in, Richard?
It's the Army promised me school. I think my focus was always on the law enforcement side, the things I wanted to do, kind of in that direction. Mm-hmm. But I signed up to go to military analyst school, and that's what I did. And then I had to go to Fort Knox to learn how to type because I knew absolutely nothing about typing. I still struggle with it. And then went to Vietnam. And as soon as I got in country, the very first day I got off the plane, I got on a bus, and who's driving the bus but another intelligence analyst who I went to school with. And I said, what are you doing driving a bus? And he said, buddy, chances are you're not going to ever work what we went to school to do.
Oh, wow.
And it was prophetic. I never worked a day as a military analyst. I did do some typing once upon a time, but basically what I did is I drove a truck and I pulled perimeter guard.
Where were you at?
The biggest part of the time I was in Phu-Bai, Camp Eagle, up in the north in the Phu-Bai Way area of what at that time was called South Vietnam.
Okay. For both your tours? You had two, right?
Correct. I extended, I think for two reasons. One was a sense of obligation that you get towards the other people that are in the military with you.
Right.
You have a sense of not wanting to let them down. And the other thing was, when I left Vietnam the second time, I extended for an early out. The part about being in intelligence school and wanting to be an intelligence analyst and learn something and not getting to do that. And if you go back and question it, there's nothing to question. They promised you the school.
Right.
They didn't promise anything beyond that. So in their eyes, they upheld their side of the bargain.
Yeah.
But it left a bad taste in my mouth, and I wanted out. So I would do a second tour in Vietnam, didn't care, just in order to be able to get out of the Army when I was done.
And so that's how you got a little over 2 years in.
Actually, it was when your second tour is an extension. It's a 6 month at a time. It's considered a second tour, but I stayed over there for a year and a half. My initial tour was a year, and then the extension was 6 months.
Okay. What's the biggest memory you got from there, from Vietnam, would you say?
I think the biggest memory is the very first day in country, getting off the plane. For the very first time, there's an odor in the air, and you don't really know what it is, but it stinks.
Yeah.
And, of course, you're landing at one of the biggest military bases in South Vietnam. You're landing at Tan Son Nhut Air Force Base right there next to Saigon.
Right.
Huge area, lots of people. But the smell is burning feces. It's where they mix diesel fuel with poop, and they burn it. And it has a rather distinctive odor.
Yeah, it does.
And then the heat. I'm from Kentucky. It's hot in Kentucky. It lays in the Ohio Valley. Humidity lies there, especially in the summertime. Right. So it's not odd at all for humidity levels to stay up in the 70s and 80s. So I'm used to heat. I grew up around heat, but there's no comparison. Absolutely no comparison. When you get to Vietnam and it's 110 degrees and the humidity's in the 90s, it is the hottest I've ever felt.
Yeah.
And I think those first two things have always stuck with me. Now, there were other things that occurred, nightmarish things that stick with you. But somewhere along the line, I learned that I get to choose my focus.
Yeah.
That came late in life. It came with all these changes I went through here this past 11 years. But I get to choose my focus. And I don't want to focus on the things that scared the hell out of me. I don't mind focusing on the poop smell and the stink and the heat and the humidity and the clothes drenched all the time to the point of rotting. And that's not my focus. I can't go there. I have to leave that where it's at and focus on the things we did that was funny, and the camaraderie in a combat situation is off the charts. These people become your brothers.
You know what's pretty cool, Richard, is we do that almost automatically. You know, they always talk about, you know, military people are just funny. But I think that's the thing, you know, even if it's in like training where like the stress is high, one of the best ways to shed some of that is with a little bit of humor.
Right.
And it kind of becomes like kind of the backbone of our mental health, like our way to stave off, you know, stress and hard times. And we do it better when there's a lot of people around that are like-minded. And I mean, that definitely helps, and you get some great comedy.
Well, and I'm glad I had that experience early in life, because I followed a high adrenal job after I left the military. It was like being an adrenaline junkie and you needed that fix, so you do something that's going to be able to provide that. So, but I learned in the Army, in a combat situation, about the humor and the practical jokes and the ways we have of coping.
Right.
And I was able to employ that in my career, my life career.
So you still keep humor close to your heart then?
I'm sorry?
You still keep humor close to your heart now?
Yes.
Good. Well, Richard, what was it like when you got out? I mean, I know that all of us veterans and people that love and respect veterans, they know what you came home to. But what did you bring back with you that stayed with you for a while?
Anger and disappointment, I think, were probably the major reactions. Like I said, I'm the son of a World War II vet who came back to ticker tape parades.
Yeah.
And people singing praises. And I was told, not the first time I came back, because in between tours, in between the year, I received a 30-day leave to go home. And then I had to return for the second tour. But during the first, let's come back to that in a minute. That's a little too close.
Okay. Yeah. What would you like
let's just go on and jump into it. The anger and disappointment was when I returned the second time, the last time, the final time, I'm done. I'm out of the service. They recommended that we not wear our uniforms home.
Right.
They didn't want anybody to recognize us as being Vietnam vets. They didn't want us talking about being Vietnam vets. They said things can get bad for you if you go home in uniform. I had to take my uniform off, and I'm proud of what I've done.
Right.
I'm proud of answering my country's call. I'm proud of being a veteran. And I came back to that.
Right.
Don't let anybody know. Don't wear your uniform home. Be a civilian. Bye. Have a good time. And that was pretty much what it was like. So yeah, there was quite a bit of resentment there. And then the drinking started. Of course, the drinking didn't start. The drinking continued because that was an outlet in Vietnam too.
Yeah.
And it got to the point where it was scary. And so I won't mention the name. I went to one of the veterans support groups, one of the big ones. There's 2 or 3 big ones, and I won't say which one it was. And I talked to a counselor and told him about the dreams, told him about the drinking, told him that I was deaf in my left ear. I can't hear anything out of it. And then really the main reason I was talking to him was the dreams.
Mm-hmm.
And commonly now known as PTSD, it didn't have a name then.
Right.
It was still looked at as what they called during World War II and World War I as being shell shock.
Yeah.
And it was a bad time. But anyway, the advice I got from them was go home, suck it up. It'll get better.
Now are these Vietnam vets that you're getting the advice from, or
this would have been older people, Korea, World War II vets,
right?
That were probably repeating what they were told. Go home, suck it up.
Well, I think I've thought about this for quite a while, and I associate it with back home. Is like, the World War II veterans, man, they came home. They didn't. Very few of them dispersed to other parts of the country. They usually came back to where they joined from, back to their families, and that in itself is an excellent, transition piece. Is having familiar things around you and getting back into what you fought for, and it made it much easier. And it's as the years, as we get away from that time, you can see how people graduate school and move to other parts of the country.
Right.
And then when people get out nowadays, if you've been to you've never been to California before, you get out of California, maybe you choose to stay there because it's something new and it's exciting for you. And so with that, you don't get a lot of the familiarity of going back home. So I could definitely see where that generation would do that, especially with the VFWs, and drinking was kind of a big deal.
Right.
A way of organizing the group.
I don't fault them.
Yeah.
It's like I said, they parroted what they were told.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
So I don't really fault them, but there were still some anger issues there. And so what I ended up doing is I just ended up having the dreams for 40 some odd years. And but I integrated myself into society. I was productive. The drinking finally played itself out. I think I probably continued to drink until I was 40.
Right.
And then since then, I haven't drank at all. I was able to hide it real good, just like I was able to hide being deaf in one ear.
Right.
I adapted.
Now, hey, Richard, during you had 28-year career in the Kentucky State Police, right?
Correct, in law enforcement. Yep.
How was that? Can you talk about that a little bit? Like maybe some of the similarities or the differences?
Absolutely the best job I ever had. Well, no, I've got to take that back. Owning my own business was the best job I ever had. But I worked for the state police, and I never had a bad day. Every day I wanted to go to work. It was something I really enjoyed what I did. Went through the promotional process once, which it's voluntary, but you have to go through a process. It's a 3-phase process to get promoted within the state police. Mm-hmm. And the first time for sergeant, I ended up after everything, the 3 phases are all totaled up. I was tied for first to get promoted to sergeant. So I actually got promoted, but I got to stay where I was, so I didn't have to move. I never wanted to go any higher. You don't feed the bear when you get up too high. You become an administrator.
Right. Yeah,
and
I felt that.
I never wanted to be an administrator. I wanted to be a police officer. I wanted to work. I wanted to make a difference. I wanted to do things for people. I think, not subconsciously, on some level, after Vietnam, I felt like I owed more, and I ended up choosing a life in service to others. And I still do that to this day.
That's the thing, Richard. Every veteran, they do have, that's the name of the podcast, Heart of the Volunteer. This really, when you think about it, like when I look out across the veteran landscape, continuing to serve, communities, states, the country, that's a hallmark of what we do. And
we do.
And here's the thing, it's not lost on your generation at all. Veterans, Vietnam veterans are out there, getting after it. Heck, they kept communities together, waiting for my generation to come around.
Right.
And that was a long time. That was a long time when you think about it. So.
Yes, it was. I think it's, there are people that will say they join for college benefits. There are people that will say they've joined for a great number of different, but I think when you get right down to it, the people that volunteer to go in have a need to be in service.
Yeah.
To the collectiveness of this country.
I would agree with that, Richard, wholeheartedly.
So it is a calling. It's like being a police officer. It's a calling. Everybody can't do that.
Right.
And I hope I did it successfully. I hope I did more good than bad. I hope I made the right decisions. Everybody second guesses themselves. But I'm quite confident that I had a really good career.
Well, I would have to say, if you went to work every day and you felt and you wanted to go to work, that you You probably did it right.
Never had a bad day.
Because no one was trying to get you to quit. You know?
I feel bad for the people that are policing in the current the direction the country's in right now.
Yeah. The current environment
so bad for them.
Current environment is tough. It's tough for everybody, I think.
Yeah.
So now, Richard, would you say that getting back to service, joining the Kentucky State Police, was that a part of like your big recovery program? Would you say?
I don't know. I think in part because I did want to make up for things that had taken place in my life in Vietnam to the world. You never know what your actions in the grand scheme of things. You don't know what your actions might have caused. So I think I just wanted to get into something where I could give back.
Right.
And I did. I mean, I've done a lot of good, and I still have that need to still do more. I'm still doing things today. I still volunteer to do things. Yes.
So what played a big role in your in your recovery? Getting over Vietnam, and then the shortcomings that you felt, that you didn't do enough, didn't get the job to do the job that you did. But what's helping you get back on solid footing?
Well, it number one, Chris, took a long time to do because I got to be really adept at hiding things. What I projected wasn't what was going on the inside. The dream, and I talk about that a little bit in the book, I think, but the dream was always the same. And the dream was basically I was being judged, or that was the feeling that I was being judged about. Why did I live when so many didn't?
Yeah.
Why did I make it through when so many people that I were friends with or went to school with died? And the dream was of being judged. There was never any words spoken. There was just people looking at you, and it was a sweat popper.
Yeah.
But I got really good at hiding, about not really projecting what's going on inside, and until late in life, really. I think my life changed completely and totally a little over 11 years ago. And once again, I left Vietnam, but Vietnam really never left me.
Yeah, right. Richard, you want to talk about that?
Which part?
Your diagnosis.
Yeah. 11 years ago, last month, I was diagnosed with a rare blood cancer that was one of the 12 things at the time that the VA accepted as being related to the time I spent in Vietnam. It's related to Agent Orange exposure.
Right.
It's a relatively rare cancer, but it's growing now. I'll get into that in a minute. But at the time, it was relatively rare with not really any treatment options. And the first doctor told me I'd be dead within 3 years, and they would do what they could, but it's incurable. And then I went to the VA and saw a specialist there, oncology specialist. And she not only told me I'd be dead within 3 years, she told me I'd be bedbound. This was in September of 2008. She said by November I'd be bedbound. And once again, reiterated what the other doctor said about it being an incurable cancer. Excuse me. And there was very little they could do about it. And so I got mad.
Yeah.
And I think anger was the prevailing emotion. It was what ended up leading me in a good place, but I had to go through that phase of anger first. And I walked away from Western medicine totally for 2.5 years. I returned. Walking away wasn't a good idea, Chris. Walking away was a bad idea in a way, but in another way, I learned the importance of the word balance. I needed to find a balance between the best and safest of Western medicine and the best of the alternative world that I came to embrace after I was diagnosed.
Right.
But walking away wasn't a good idea. During that period of time, I had 6 broken ribs, and in June of 2010, I broke my spine. I know what I was doing the day I broke my spine. I knew I had majorly screwed up, and I still didn't go to a doctor. I put on a Velcro belly brace that kind of supported the spine a little.
Yeah.
And I didn't go to a doctor until October of that year.
How long were you injured?
And
few months?
Yeah. But in that 3 months, the period of time, I I did everything I always did. I mowed the yard. I put up hay. I owned the stables at the time. We went on vacation and went to Gettysburg, walked all around that place, came to Maine, went kayaking, went four-wheeling, went hiking, and this was all with a broken back.
Right.
This is bad because even in the middle of the night to get up and go to the bathroom, I'd have to roll out and crawl on my hands and knees because it was so bad. So I went back to the VA, and on a Thursday, they did a CAT scan. They called me back on that afternoon and told me I had an appointment the next day with a orthopedic spinal surgeon in Louisville. And of course, the thought that crossed my mind was any doctor that I can get in to see in one day can't be very good. But it turned out he was the only doctor in Kentucky that could do that kind of surgery because I had lost part of my spine. When it broke, it shattered and it self-absorbed. I had one little nub of that particular vertebra left, and it was compressing the spinal cord. So it was bad.
Yeah.
So I have a cadaver vertebra. I'm not paralyzed. I still do everything I want to do. We just put up 70 bales of hay the other day. I mean, I still, even at my rapidly growing age, I still am very active. I like to do. So I'm held together in the back with rods and screws and somebody else's backbone, and I don't focus on it either. It's there. As far as I'm concerned, it's fixed. It healed. But at that point in time, I did return to Western medicine, and there are things I will agree to do, and there still are things I will not agree to do. It comes down to me to a quality of life issue rather than the length of life.
Now, how's your cancer right now?
Number one, I don't call it mine.
Okay.
I've never even uttered the word I have or anything. The closest I'll get is I'm diagnosed with. I see words as being very powerful, and I don't want to give cancer any power from my end.
How is your diagnosis going? How's that?
That's good. I recently went 3.5 years with no intervention other than I take a bone builder every 3 months. It's an infusion of Zometa to keep the bone strong, and it seems to be doing a really bang-up job. The alternatives I do has slowed the markers down, the ones that they watch the closest with myeloma, to the point of me going 3.5 years with no treatment. I mean, they continue to grow. It continues to be an incurable cancer, but it is becoming a treatable cancer for time.
Okay.
Eventually, the cancer will learn to circumvent the things you're using to try to control it. But for right now, life's good for me. Well,
that's the thing, Richard. You have a an extremely positive outlook on life. I mean, I couldn't imagine, in August 2008 where you were, and then how, you break your back and dealing with that to where you are today. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's, and we're going to talk about the path, that got you to where you are today. But it's, I'm glad you're with us. I am, sir.
I am too. I've still got things to do.
Yeah. Well, hey, let's talk about let's talk about what else you got going on. How your service to humanity. How about that?
That'll be a good subject. I got out of state police in 1998, retired, and had been around horses and animals all my life. Mm-hmm. So I bought a farm. I had gone through another divorce. That's another thing that seems to haunt people from Vietnam. But I had been married at the time 23 years. I had a 5-year-old son. He was with me. Anyway, bought a farm and worked myself to death building it into a boarding facility for horses. And we did boarding and training and foaling. And owned my own business. And that became my happy time. Yeah. That was my happy time. That's absolutely the best thing I ever did. I didn't want to make a lot of money. I was very selective on whose horse I took care of, and I wanted to meet the people and see because I didn't charge a lot of money. I could have charged a lot. Yeah. But the idea was to have a place where people could come and safely be with their horses.
Right.
It was more about the horse. Even then, it was more about the horse.
I like
that. And that's what we created. And we built I started this out. I didn't meet my wife until 2001, September 23rd, coming up here on, yeah. And had no intention of getting married. None.
Yeah.
None. I was done with that part. And it's funny, a friend of mine, at that time we had pagers. And I was pretty much retired from state police. I was gone, but I still had a pager, and a friend of mine paged me and wanted me to call. And I called him, and he goes into this story about this woman that's at the state police post, and she's got a horse, and she needs a place to board it. And I said, time out, Jeff. I don't overnight board horses. I don't want to. I'm not going to start. I can't help you. And then he said, well, but, she's been on the road a long time, and she's tired. And I said, I'm sorry. I can't help you. I don't do that. And he said, hang on a minute. And he put her on the phone. And he knew what he was doing.
Yeah, he did.
I'll tell him no on the heartbeat. But I ended up telling her yes.
Right.
And it was almost a year later, she ended up moving in with me. And 2005, we got married. So we were together for 5 years before we got married.
Okay.
But we've been together ever since.
So is that's the Double R stable? So that's Richard Rowland or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, my wife's name's Jennifer, but I started the stables before we met. So it, and I had some great boarders. I had boarders that were with me for the whole time, for 15 years, 16 years or better.
Yeah.
So, and it was a hard decision to make to sell, to quit.
Right.
I mean, I knew all along. I knew my health challenges. Mm-hmm. I knew what I was going through. I knew I was aging out. I knew when I built the business there would come a point in time where I'd have to sell it. I wouldn't be able to do the work anymore.
Right.
But when I did sell it, I didn't. I still thought I had a few more good years in me. But the world has a way of showing you the direction you need to go, right. And I follow.
Where'd that take you to, Richard?
I am currently in Maine. I travel back and forth to Kentucky as often as I can, but I also travel. I'm a motivational speaker. I spend quite a bit of time in Texas. I got to go back down there again. I think I sell more books in Texas than I do anywhere. But my wife is from Maine, and her folks were aging out. They were in their 80s. Her dad was at the time starting to develop some memory issues. We didn't want to see him in a nursing home. They didn't want to come to Kentucky as much as I would have preferred that.
Right.
So we sold out, and I moved my wife back up here so she could be with her parents. Now, her dad, we've been doing this for a little over 3 years. And the last 2 years that her dad lived, he had Alzheimer's.
Right.
Is what he ended up with. And that was a rough couple of years. And he passed away last August. And now her mom has dementia, but it's nowhere near the level of Alzheimer's.
Right.
So, but that's what we do. We're up here. We take care of them. I still work on writing. I travel as a motivational speaker, and I mentor people.
What have you been writing?
Well, Chris, animals were the catalyst for me, for the change I needed to go through. I know when this first started, I was home alone one day, and I was on my knees, and I don't have a religious background. I don't have that to lean on. I didn't have that upbringing.
Right.
But regardless, there's a lot of atheists that will call out to God when something bad's going on.
Yeah.
So I was home alone, and I was crying, and I was on my knees, and I was screaming at anyone and everything that would listen about the unfairness of what was going on. I mean, I had finally met somebody that I loved. Without a doubt, it was different from the very beginning. My son at that time was a sophomore in high school, and he was doing great. He was having. How do you tell sophomore in high school? In addition to being a sophomore in high school, which is tough enough, how do you tell him your father's been diagnosed with an incurable cancer? I didn't. That's the truth of the matter. I didn't tell him.
Yeah.
But when I was screaming about those things and crying, it was totally unfair. I mean, life couldn't get any better for me at the time. And then that happens. And I'm not at the time, I was a very science-based type of person. It's black, white, it's right, wrong, and there's nothing else in the world. But I had this feeling washed over me that things are not what they're seen. And it stopped me in my tracks. I stopped screaming. I stopped crying. I'm going, where the hell did that come from? Because that's not me.
Yeah.
It wasn't at that time. That's not me to have that kind of thought. What is that? Things aren't what they seem. But then, if that wasn't crazy enough, shortly after that, things started happening that you can't explain.
Yeah.
Defies coincidence. It defies science. It's one of those everybody's heard of and experienced those, how in the hell did that happen moments.
Yeah.
But I was getting them rapid fire. And it, like the next book that I'm working on is strictly about animals. It's all about animals because most of the messages that came to me when I was first diagnosed and I was really struggling trying to find a direction, most of the things that came to me came through animals.
Yeah.
Through horses, through dogs, through cats. That's what, it's like there was a veil that thinned between what I perceive as reality and what's real, what's actually there.
Right.
And that changed my life totally and completely. I started writing some of these things down that were occurring, And it wasn't written as an experienced author might write. It's strictly I'm a storyteller. I've always been a storyteller.
Yeah.
So I write in that style of I'm just relaying to you what happened to me. And people liked what I was writing. I let a few people read the first story, and then I let a few people read the second story. And by the time the third and fourth story rolled around, people are saying you need to write a book. And people say that. I even say that to people. Sometimes I mean it, sometimes I don't. I want to encourage people,
right.
but they planted the idea. And when I was really struggling and trying to find my direction, I even went to a psychic medium. You ever been?
No, I haven't.
It was crazy, Chris. It was. This was early on. Now, this was back when, like I said, the veil's thinning, and I'm getting to see things.
Mm-hmm.
So you make this appointment with a psychic medium, and they don't want your name. Sure, they've got a caller ID, but what they're seeing for me at the time is a cell phone number, and at that time, you really couldn't research cell phone numbers.
Right.
So I go in and I sit down and I'm talking to her, and this didn't surprise me too much, but she said, I can see that you've been sick, and it's got something to do with your blood, but you're getting better. Now, all that's spot on.
Right.
And maybe all illnesses have something to do with the blood. But it was enough to pique my interest. And she went on to tell me so many things that could have come, that could be common enough to be shared. But I had a great uncle when I was growing up. His name was Uncle Ruby. That's all I ever knew him by was Uncle Ruby. I didn't know his name was Reuben until I went through this little trial and I started going into Ancestry. So she asked me, who is the man in your life named Ruby, and what do you have in your house that belongs to him? Because he says you have two things that belong to him.
Uh-oh.
And I'm going, number one, how did you guess that I have a man in my life that's name is Ruby?
Right.
Number one. And number two, how could you possibly know that I have a 5-board bench in my house that he made in the 1800s, and I have his shaving mug? That's the only things I have that belong to him.
Yeah.
How did she know that I had two things that belong to him? It was, you can't make this up.
It's very auspicious.
That's point on specific.
Yeah.
So then we get to the end of the conversation, and she says, I see that you're going to write a book. And I just busted out laughing. Furthest thought from my mind is writing a book. I don't know how. I'm not a writer. I laughed at her, and she said, no. I see this. You're going to write a book, and it's going to help a lot of people.
Excellent.
Okay, so I pay my bill and go on my way. And then 3 years later, I mailed her a copy of the book I wasn't going to write.
Yep.
So.
Unspoken Messages.
Right. Which that has given birth to another book that I wanted to come out before Christmas, but it looks like it's going to be a little after the first of the year, that is going to be titled something to the effect of A Glimpse Behind the Veil. And it is nothing but animal stories from start to finish. And they're all stories that are unbelievable, that talk about my belief as the animals being much more evolved, with abilities we don't realize they have, than we've been spoon-fed to believe. When you're born into a family, and their beliefs are fed to you, and their beliefs become your ideals, and that becomes your life, and that's what you believe in, because that's what you were taught.
Yeah.
Chris, I'm here to tell you, it's a hell of a lot bigger than I was ever taught.
Oh, yeah.
So the second book is strictly, it doesn't have anything to do with the cancer journey or anything to do with that. It's just about animals. And then there's, I have actually started a book for next year, which is a book of affirmations. It'll be heavily illustrated by an artist. Each affirmation will have its own illustration. There'll probably be 50 or so affirmations as you go through. Things to do to change your life. Things to do for just one day that might plant the seeds for your life to be better forever.
I like that.
So those are the things I'm working on now, and I just keep making plans because I'm not going anywhere yet.
Yeah. Well, hey, Richard, let me ask you a question about your Texas trips. Where do you go when you go down to Texas?
I met a lady named Kim Thomas, virtually at first, that read the book, and she was a fan of it. And it's super, super nice family. They're in the suburbs of Dallas. They're in the Pilot Point and Bartonville area of Texas. And she runs it was the biggest rescue I've ever seen. She runs 70 to 80 rescued horses a month. Can you imagine how much money goes into that?
Yeah.
70 to 80 horses a month that have been rescued from either abusive, neglect, or abandonment issues that are being sold on the market for human consumption.
Right.
And she rescues them. If she can rehome them, she does. And if she can't rehome them, then she takes care of them for the rest of their lives.
You know, Richard, I'd like to hook you up with Derek Knapp. Derek is he's in charge of Restoration Ranch down there in Bastrop, just south of Austin. I'm gonna try to hook you guys up, here on Facebook. You guys can talk. I mean, he works equine therapy down there. And just so you guys can talk about some of this stuff, because he's got the same thing, like the messages he gets from animals. Got him through, after the service, and he's doing the same thing you're doing. He's out there getting in other people's lives to help them.
Right.
I'd like for you guys to hook up. I think you could do some great things together.
That'd be awesome. I'd love to talk to him.
Yeah. Derek's good. He's good people, man, just like you. Yeah.
I try to get down in that area at least a couple of times a year. I'm due a trip here pretty soon, and I've been hearing from people that I'm due a trip here pretty soon. There's a place down there called Ranch Hand Rescue. They have a huge fundraiser. I think it's usually in either late October or early November. There's Hollywood personalities that come to it, and I've been at that. Donate books and then sell books signed there for them. They get the money. I don't want the money. This has never been about money.
Well, hey, if you're going to make it down there again here, let me know. If I can make it down, I'd love to come down, meet with you. Maybe we can do a face-to-face episode. Maybe talk about some of your affirmations.
That would be awesome.
Okay.
That would be great. I look forward to something like that.
Yeah.
I wrote in the book when I wrote the book a long time ago that you need to have a bucket list of things that you want to do. But the people that make it through challenges are the people like me that do something on the bucket list and then mark it off and go to the bottom of the list and add something else.
Keep going. Yeah.
The more you have to do, the more you've obligated to yourself to. Now, granted, we're all going to die.
Yeah.
But I think the longer that people that have plans are going to be here the longest. Now, you hear about somebody that was diagnosed with a really bad cancer, very short period of time to live, according to Western medicine, that wanted to stay alive to see a wedding, a family wedding, or their son's graduating from medical school, or, all kinds of reasons that they want to stay here for a short period of time. And invariably they do. And then they die.
Man, that touches.
It's like even my brother. I had a brother that was diagnosed with cancer, and he died in 1995, half brother. And he was told he would live 6 months. Guess how long he lived?
How long did he get?
6 months. You hear of people that are given a year, that are given weeks, that are given a month, and they come to fruition. And why is that? Because they planted the seed and you let it grow.
Yeah.
You fertilized it, you hoed it, you weeded it, you let it grow into something that it became what they said would happen happened.
You know, Richard, what you're saying, that probably touches home for a lot of people. It definitely does for me. My mom had breast cancer, you know, that she battled for 13 years. And, you know, you talk about adding something to your bucket list. You know, I think my mom did that. You know, her grandkids, she just loved them to death. And every time one got added, it's like it fired her up even more. And it kept her, you know, it kept her around, I think.
Right.
You know? So yeah, yeah, you got me on that one, man. That's,
well,
yeah.
so many strange things happened to me early on, and I'm sincere when I said it was like a thinning of the veil between what I perceive to be real and what's actually real.
Mm-hmm.
But books played a huge part. I've always been a reader.
Yeah.
But I was in Barnes & Noble one day, and I was going through the self-help. This was when I was early into the diagnosis. And there's a book that's pulled out. It's almost to the point of teetering, where it could fall on the floor. So I reached up and I grabbed the book to shove it back in where it went. And I thought, well, I'll look at it. So it's a book called Love, Medicine, and Miracles by Bernie Siegel, a doctor. So I read the front of the book, I read the back of the book, and I stuck it under my arm, and I bought it. It's like the universe just laid this here in front of me and said, hey, you need to read this book. And Bernie Siegel is a medical doctor. He's a surgeon. He specialized in oncology surgery. So he dealt with people with cancer on a daily basis. And he could tell you the ones that were going to make it and the ones that definitely were not, because of their mindset, because of how they looked at the disease. And I think it was probably very important that was the first book that I read. Now, Bernie's written several other books. I ended up meeting him. He's a best-selling author, and he is one super man. He is one of the finest people I've ever had the opportunity to speak with. Very encouraging. I just recently lost his wife here I think she passed away about 6 months ago. But Bernie is one of the most positive people in the world. And he tells you in Love, Medicine, and Miracles, which is one of the first books I recommend for people to read, he tells you that your mindset has more to do with healing than anything in the world that he's going to do for you.
Yeah.
Anything. We have a power within us that unfortunately many people go through life without ever discovering that it's there. And if I hadn't been diagnosed with cancer, I would have never discovered. I don't went through life in my same hard-headed, one foot in front of the other way of going through life.
Yeah.
You know, accepting of my lot. When that's, Chris, it's bigger. It's so much bigger than I ever thought.
Yeah, I definitely, you have to get away from what you know, I believe.
Right.
I think,
well said.
You know, like you said, you know, reading books that opens up other streams of thought, you know, other ideas. And that's the whole thing. You know, we're all about, you know, the human race is about ideas. I mean, we've been acting on ideas since the beginning. But some of those things you need to open yourself up to them. So you can change.
I watched the movie early on in this, too. I think I might have told you about it. It was called The Secret by Rhonda Murray.
Uh-huh.
This power that I speak of that's within us all, if you watch that movie, and millions of people have, you'll see that the knowledge of this power has been pretty common throughout people that you wouldn't expect. Henry Ford, Thomas Edison.
Yep.
And you go through some of these people that you've heard of all your life, but they knew about this. They knew this ability that we have to manifest and to create with thought, with intention.
Yep. Intentions. Yep.
And that's where I discovered how amazing life can be. And I think my mindset and the way I face a cancer diagnosis is the reason I'm still here. And yes, anger is what started this all out. I was angry at the doctor. I do not like receiving an unsolicited prognosis from anybody because you don't know.
Right.
I don't want anybody planting a seed in me that I'm going to die within 3 years. I don't like that. And that's what started the initial anger. It wasn't that I was being diagnosed with something like that. It was, why did you tell me what my expiration date was when you don't know?
Yeah. So you're going to, and that's the big thing. You have to live, you should be living your life when you're well as if it could be your last day. And just because you know tomorrow could be your last day, now you're going to live it. You should be doing that anyway.
Right.
Unfortunately, sometimes we have to get smacked around in order for us to realize that. But, I mean, it's crazy how we work.
Yeah,
We
I
think
heard and I read.
We have tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow.
Yeah. I read, I don't know how many books, and in the book Unspoken Messages, I list a bunch of books that I think anybody going through a cancer diagnosis needs to read those books. But they were my journey. They were my journey. They laid the bricks in the road, and I'm just walking behind them. And I have. It's just amazing the things that we're capable of doing. But I preach to doctors, and I've had a lot of doctors that have read Unspoken Messages. I have some very dear, close friends who are medical doctors. Mm-hmm. And some doctors will read the book and get mad, but the majority of them read the book and understand.
Yeah.
I don't believe if the person doesn't ask you how long they have, you don't have any business guessing or saying or planting a seed about how long they have.
Yeah.
Focus on the positives. Focus. I get up every day. I'm filled with gratitude that I woke up again. That's how my day begins.
Yeah.
Is giving gratitude. That is the mindset.
Now, Richard, when you take, taking the mindset that you've got, what are, when you're out there mentoring people, what are you doing for them with that?
When I talk about me receiving an unsolicited prognosis, mm-hmm. it was like all hope was stripped from me.
Yeah.
It was like I no longer had any hope. They're trying to tell me they know that I'm going to die within this period of time. And it was like any semblance of hope was gone. And what I've learned since then is hope's the seed. If you've got hope and you plant it and you take care of it and you feed it, it's going to become belief. And belief is going to be what saves you. I think if you can reach the point of absolute belief, now I'm talking about there is absolutely not one single atom of doubt in your mind that this is true, then this is true.
Yeah.
And that's also the hardest place to arrive at because we all have a tendency to focus on the fear.
Yep.
You can't focus on the fear and arrive at that place of no doubt. It's really, Neil Donald Walsh wrote a series. He's an author, public speaker, but he also wrote a series of books that said Conversations with God was the beginning. Now he's wrote 3 or 4 in a series, but I'm speaking of the first book. And in this book, it's a nonfiction work. Neil Donald Walsh is at his lowest point in life. And he begins talking to God. He begins getting answers back. That's the whole purpose of the book. So, I don't know, it's about a third, half of the way through. One day, God says, okay, what's your question today? And Neil said, and I'm paraphrasing, I could ask you anything. I could ask you how to cure cancer. I could ask you how to stop world wars and get an answer for that. So it's going to sound really simple and silly when I ask you, did Jesus really walk on water? And if he did, how? And God said, because it never occurred to him he couldn't.
Yeah.
He had absolute faith and belief that he could. Never occurred to him for 1 second that he could not do it. That's where you have to arrive, Chris. You have to arrive at absolute belief and faith. And it's the hardest part to get to. But you ask me what I do for people that I mentor. I bring them hope.
Yeah.
I don't give them false narratives. I don't bring any, I give them hope. I show them people that have succeeded, that have faced the same things and how they did. And that's why I read so much, because if Bill successfully navigated a cancer diagnosis with multiple myeloma, I want to know how he did it so I can.
Yeah.
So I show people that. And I show them, like the books that I read that I listed in Unspoken Messages. Oh my word! There's books by Eben Alexander, who died and had a near-death experience, and he's a neurosurgeon. There's books by a heart surgeon in the Netherlands that did a 25-year study on near-death experiences. Those kind of books. And the funniest thing happens when you are able to convince people that death is not to be feared, that death is a transition only from A to B. I don't know where that is. I don't have any way of knowing, but I do know it exists. There is something else. And when you can shift their focus to where they believe those things, the most amazing thing happens is they live.
Right.
I have a girl that I work with that's, I won't mention names. She was a runway model out of Maryland. Very attractive lady, very highly educated, was diagnosed with metastasized thyroid cancer 2.5 years ago now. 2.5, 3, given a year to live. A nurse with, an RN with bile duct cancer. Was given 6 weeks to live 2 years ago.
Yep.
When you take the fear factor out, people live.
Yep.
When you shift your focus away from that fear, the two main motivating forces in the world are love and fear. That is it. There are no others. Everything fits those two categories. If you can spend more time in love, you're going to live longer.
Yep.
So when I mentor, that's what I do. I lay things out for people and convince them that death is not an end. It's not. You are energy. Energy can't be created. Energy can't be destroyed.
Yep. It just is. So, Richard, what are your lessons learned that you would like to impart with the other veterans out there that are just trying to get through a hard patch, or trying to maintain, the solid footing they've got now?
It might be a combination of both. I think a lot of it fits what the person I'm talking to needs the most. I laid out what I believe and what I learned in the second half of Unspoken Messages, all the little things that I learned, and I think they've been the most quoted from the book was out of those 2 chapters. It's never as bad as it seems.
Right.
Reality is individual. We may say it's reality, but my view of reality and your view of reality is probably 2 different things. It might be minutely different, but it's still going to be different.
Yep.
But
very
still,
subjective.
Your reality is yours, and you believe what you see and interpret. But we're all part of the same thing. We're all part of the same energy. We're all exactly the same inside. We've got different outsides, obviously. We've got different ideals, obviously, and each of us believe in those as much as possible. but they may not always be in HOV. There are other, I don't know how you feel about reincarnation. I have come to embrace it, the possibilities of reincarnation, strictly because of the fact that we are energy. Everything is energy.
Mm-hmm.
A granite slab vibrates. All appearances, it's solid. It vibrates. It has its own tone.
Right.
It's not solid. It appears solid, but it's really not. So we all have that.
Yeah. No, I agree. I am studying the dreams, like the philosophy of dreams right now. And, like right now the Dalai Lama is talking, and basically talking about sleep and, being awake and sleeping. It is basically a process, a miniature living and dying that occurs every day.
Mm-hmm.
That, our dreams, that eventually you won't wake up. You'll just be in a long dream until you return.
Right.
So, yeah.
I take it a step further, and it's not that I'm planting seeds that aren't true, but I play a lot of what ifs.
Mm-hmm.
What if every single thing that you've experienced in this life, at some point in time, you asked?
All right, everybody. We kind of lost Richard on the phone there, but Richard, we got you back.
Yes, we do. I'm proud to be here again.
Okay. Well, we're glad to have you, man. No, go ahead, Richard. I can't really remember where we were, so.
Well, we were talking about reincarnation, or I was, and I had gone off. We all develop our beliefs, and I think what's important is that you have them.
Yeah, definitely.
I don't think it's that important that your beliefs might be different. It doesn't mean that they're wrong. It just means that they're different. But I have embraced the possibility of reincarnation, and I've taken it a little step further in that because we don't know for sure, how do you know that everything that you experience in this life isn't what you asked to experience because you never had previously?
Right.
Including cancer. Maybe I've never had anything like this before. Maybe I asked for it, and you don't know. So it brings me a sense of peace, knowing that what we do, we will continue to do.
Yeah. No, I agree with you 100%. People have to have belief. Like you were saying, you have to have, 100% trust in what you're doing, belief in it. And yeah, there's just some stuff that gets in the way sometimes, that makes it tough. It makes it very, very hard for people because the unpredictability of life makes us form these ideas to get us through the stuff we don't understand.
Right.
And I think that's hard for people to, commit themselves to a belief system that runs counter, like you said, to the way they were raised. And I think that's the sticking point that a lot of people have when it comes to, Eastern philosophy. The idea that we're all connected, we're all energy. Good thoughts projected out to other people, can do good for them, can heal them, can bring peace. It's hard for people to wrap their heads around that, especially in the Western world. So
exactly, and I don't think what you believe is as important as that you believe.
Yes, that's a very good point.
You have to find something.
Yep.
And that's that is what I've done. I have found something, and it feeds me. it allows me to keep going. It allows me to keep spreading the message. It allows me to convince people that they can live longer and they can live healthier. But when they do pass away, just be ready, because it doesn't end. It may or may not be what you envision it to be, but it does not end. Something else happens.
Yep.
So, I've arrived exactly where I need to be at the time I needed to be here. It's just it's a wonderful existence right now.
Yeah.
Talking to people, talking to others, and bringing hope and having them be more positive in life. It's my new calling. I'm not rabid about it, but I do like spreading it.
Yeah. Well, I read a little bit of your book, and I think what you got going on is great. And I'm going to keep on. I want to have you back on when your second book comes out. We can talk about it.
That would be awesome.
And
there is some amazing things in there. I've been interviewing people from all over the United States and Canada, a few from England,
mm-hmm.
and some of the stories are just jaw-dropping.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm excited to read that. Let me know when it comes out.
I sure will. You'll be on the list.
And I'll get it. I'll get her downloaded on my Kindle. I'll rock it.
Awesome.
So, Richard, what do you got planned for this weekend? What's on your agenda?
I have a speech Saturday or Sunday. I think it's Saturday. Mm-hmm. I do public speaking. I think I sent you a couple of speeches that I gave.
Sure did.
One of those is scheduled for this coming weekend at a horse. Well, it's an animal rescue. It's not a horse rescue, but they got a lot of horses. And then my wife has a soap sale on Saturday that I go and help her out with those. Of course, she makes homemade soap, skincare products that she makes here. Been doing it for 13 years.
Nice.
We're both big believers in your health is particular depending on what you put in and on your body. Mm-hmm. So we try to stay as basic as we possibly can. And she has shows generally scheduled almost every weekend during the spring, summer, and fall, and then around Christmas time. So I go with her, and I'm the chick magnet. I just go and look good and draw the people in to buy soap.
That's going to be a good time. That's going to be a good time.
Oh, it is. I'm a people watcher. I think you could take me and put me in a mall, and as long as there were people walking around, I'd probably starve to death because I wouldn't get up and go do anything else.
You know, I used to be the same way with the airports. You remember before 9/11, you could go up to the gate and walk. So you'd show up there and you'd walk all the way, and it's not like you're walking fast. You got there with enough time. And I remember just sitting there and just watching the people getting on and off the planes and just kind of wondering, you know, how their trip was, where'd they go, what'd they do. And it was always pretty cool. I was like,
there's a story in everything. And I say that a lot, but pictures, photographs do that for me, but also people watching. Everything is a story. It's just not written yet.
Yeah.
Everybody has their story. Every horse is a story. Everything has a story. It's just somebody needs to write it. So you've got a natural curiosity about what's actually going on.
Yeah, you can learn a lot from watching people too.
Yes, you can.
You can learn a lot from them. Well, hey, Richard, I would like to thank you for coming on.
Chris, I had a good time. I sincerely hope we get to do this again sometime. And even if it's not a show, I would like you to stay in touch.
Oh, no, definitely. Hey, when your book comes out, I definitely want to have you come back on. We'll talk about that. And any time you've got something that can benefit veterans, just let me know. If you've got a topic that all of a sudden it seems like it needs to be talked about, let me know. We'll get you back on here.
That would be great. Yeah. I did a speech Memorial Day, I think it was, in Winter Harbor, Maine, to a fairly decent sized group of people that they enjoyed it.
Mm-hmm.
And I sent you a copy of that. When you get a chance, you might want to read it. It's pretty good.
I will. Well, sir, I appreciate you coming on, and enjoy your weekend and have an amazing time.
I will. Chris, thank you so much. I don't remember who put us in touch with each other. I'll have to go back and look and see.
And then again, thank them.
But
Yeah.
I'm glad they did.
Yeah, I do too.
All right. Well, you take care, my brother. And if you ever need anything out of me, or if you have any veterans that might benefit by talking to me, just put them in touch.
Okay. Hey, I'm going to share I'm going to share some stuff on Facebook, linking you to your page and everything like that, so people can reach out to you. Also, how they can get the book, and I'll talk to you in a little bit. We'll get some pictures of you. We'll put them on Facebook too.
It would be awesome.
Okay.
I write a blog. I wrote the book, and then I've got a couple more coming out. But one thing I don't do with the blog is I don't put out a blog every day. I might put out one every 2 months. When I'm moved to write one, I write it. So I don't beat people up with writing it and fill up their email. But
Okay.
Those are all things that may someday make it into a book of their own. I don't know yet.
All right. Yeah, I'll put that, the Richard D. RowlandBooks.com. I'll put that link on there too.
Okay.
Yep, I sure will.
All right, my brother. Thank you.
All right, Richard, you have an amazing weekend, and I'll talk to you later.
All right. You do the same.
All right.
Bye.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, Vietnam veteran Richard Rowland. We had a great conversation today, just talking about just living, right? But don't let the little things in life slip past you, okay? You know, Richard talked about these little things that he saw that was drawing him back and making him really start to think about, what was going on in his life, the hardships, so he could turn his attitude around. Richard's a very positive person, and he has every reason by any standard not to be, but yet he is. Take control of your own destiny, folks, your own way of thinking. I'm not talking about go counter to what everyone else in the world is going, but don't follow the stream that's taking you in the wrong direction. Think about what you're thinking about. I think Richard's got an amazing message. One that I learned a long time ago is you got to read. You've got to read some books. Even if it's cliff notes on a book, read something, because at least those cliff notes will give you the dynamic nature of whatever the author is trying to get across. So remember, what you put in is what you get out. All right. Hey, everybody, enjoy your weekend. Stay safe. And once again, hey, share the podcast, share the episode, leave some comments. And hey, we'll see you next week. All right. Stay blessed. Heart of Volunteer. Copyright 2019.